Live from the Tickscape Studios. Let's go.
Oh, let's freaking go, boys and ladies. Welcome to the Monday edition of LFG. Jim Kozumor joining us from just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Matt Fowler is in the production studio in Wine Country in Northern California, and Bisa, our fantastic intern, is watching and monitoring the show, ready to take your social media takes, your comments on the live stream. And she's coming to us from the Las Vegas, Nevada area. And interestingly, we've got news today that spans the country. We've got, as I always say, a lot to get to. We've got too much show today, Jim Kozumor. I don't know what we're going to leave on the tape, what we're leaving on the cutting room floor, but we have too much show today.
3-hour show and a 2-hour bag. That's what we've got. We got to figure something out. Talk faster today. That's all I say. Talk faster.
Does that mean we could be lazy tomorrow?
No, it does not mean
That's
we
a
can
good
be
question,
lazy
Matt.
Tomorrow.
Dang it.
But it's a good
I like
try,
it, Matt. I like where you're going with that, Matt.
It's a good try, Matt. You know what, though? The very first thing I'm going to get in today, out of all the things we have to get to today, the very first thing that I want to get to today is the order of business, as always.
Sandwich scoreboard update.
Oh, yeah.
You guys suck. You know what?
Matt Fowler
We're not the ones who suck, actually.
Matt Fowler
in this thing.
in the history of this show, Matt Fowler has never won a Being Matt's Bookie since we've been doing this show, and he continues to dig himself a hole. He did win 10 sandwiches Super Bowl week by getting some interviews, but he is now backtracked, and Jim Kozumor, he lost 2 more sandwiches to me over the weekend. He is now 4 sandwiches in the red, owing me 4, and he's 1 sandwich in the red, owing you 1 sandwich. So he's down 5 sandwiches right now.
That's pretty, that's tough, but I think he lost his first bet of his 5-team parlay the other day.
No,
I think it was his first game.
It was a 3-team parlay, and he lost the.
3?
He lost.
No, it was a 14 parlay.
Timberwolves
and I won
king.
all of them except for the
first.
Minnesota one.
Yeah, he lost.
Yeah, and
he lost on this team.
Timberwolves.
He lost on the
Minnesota Timberwolves.
Just the Timberwolves.
See, don't bet on them if you can't say their name, bruh. Just telling you.
So, unfortunately for Matt, Anthony Edwards, we talked about it on Friday that there were 4 Timberwolves players that are about to become dads. Well, Anthony Edwards is the first one to get into the clubhouse as he left the Timberwolves game against the Kings at halftime to be there for the birth of his first child. And unfortunately for Matt Fowler, that negatively impacted the outcome. And
priorities, man.
Yeah, he
Come
didn't
on.
care about winning the wager for Matt. He cared about being there for the birth of his child. And then the Timberwolves, not the Wolves, they fall in overtime to the Sacramento Kings.
You can have another one. You can have another kid. Come on, man. Just win the game first.
I love how I was able to pull this off of the feed on Friday and make it sound like you actually went into the studio and recorded this.
Timberwolves.
That is awesome.
The magic of editing. That I also got one for you, Coz, over the weekend.
I have
All right.
ridden the whip.
There we go. So I have Ghost Ridden the Whip. We got Matt
I
with
love
the
that.
Timberwolves. We also got Matt's this last gem.
Abort mission, Matt.
So we got all those. I
Dude,
think
that's awesome.
I might need to add some echo to that, but yeah. So we got those ready to go. Anyway, so we got the sandwich scoreboard update out of the way, but the real news over the weekend, I don't know which piece of news is the biggest, to be honest with you. The Combine wrapped up, so there's a lot of stuff going on with that. Matt Mayoko is going to join us, the 49ers insider for NBC Sports Bay Area, but we're going to have him on today to talk more of a 30,000-foot view of the Combine as a whole, and also want to get his takes on one of the really just trailblazers in the sport, covering the sport. Chris Mortensen from ESPN passed away yesterday. Yesterday, the news broke at 72 years old. And, Coz, I've gotten to know a lot of people in my time as a broadcaster in pretty much every major sport. Mort is one person who I think maybe I might have interacted with them once early in my career when I was working in Green Bay, but he's not somebody, unfortunately, that I got to know personally, but I certainly knew his work, and he was fantastic at what he did. and that is a huge loss for the sports world. And from everything I'm hearing, he was as good, if not better, of a person as he was at his craft. And so it's really an L for the entire world today on all levels, with Chris Mortensen no longer being a part of it.
So he did it in a time in which insiders were different, okay? You weren't hot take artists. You weren't first on Twitter guys. You were someone who had sources, went to those sources, found things out, and then tried to cross-check them, and then you reported it. And when you said it, there was a pretty darn good chance that it was true. And as readers, as those people who consume all that stuff, we really got to see a bunch of really fun information that had some backing. Now, I think we're being cheated by the number of insiders that we get. So I think that's why a lot of people, aside from being a tremendous human being, but in his world, the NFL world, the football world, Chris Mortensen was looked at as one of the, we always throw around that Mount Rushmore thing, but one of the Mount Rushmore guys of insiders because he had sources and he did it, Dave, in a time that was different. And I don't think today we're being served as well as fans, but guys like Mort, guys like Will McDonough, those guys, even other sports had them as well. Peter Gammons in Major League Baseball, Peter Vesey, although he did it in a somewhat dastardly way sometimes in the NBA. But those guys had sources, and it's a lot different than what we're hearing now.
And Peyton Manning put a post up yesterday on social media of a picture of him with Chris Mortensen at the Pro Football Hall of Fame and saying what a terrible loss this is for the NFL and for the world as a whole. And, I mean, so this is a guy who not only did it right and did it really well, but he gained the respect of all the people that he covered, even though, Coase, it wasn't always pleasant. Sometimes you have to break news when you're in that position that isn't just, hey, so-and-so, Mike Evans signed a 2-year extension with the Bucs. That's a big money deal. Sometimes it's, a guy got in trouble and Mortensen's got to put it out. And, that's not always a pleasant situation to be in, but he did it in a way in which he was able to earn the respect of people, and he was also able to earn the respect and the trust of the people who were taking in the information. And to be able to do that, that is really impressive.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, nowadays, and we're all caught up in this world, and I think all of us at a time have probably tweeted something out maybe before it was fully baked. And that's because everyone is in the I'm in it, I got it first game. They're not in the I got it right game. They're in the I got it first game. And so we do maybe do far too many segments on things that aren't news. And the greatest story that I have, the one that I always lean on whenever we talk about insiders and whether we talk about things that could potentially happen with an athlete, I use the J.J. Watt example. J.J. Watt tweeted out on his own when he was a member of the Houston Texans, lifelong Texan. He said, I'm leaving the Houston Texans. I wanted you to hear it from me. I didn't leak this to somebody to tweet it out, and nobody knows. Because as we know, how many times did we have answers on Tom Brady or find out where Aaron Rodgers was going to go? Well, to take the J.J. Watt circumstance further, the insiders in the National Football League assured us that there were only 3 teams that were interested because that's where J.J. Watt wanted to go. 1 was Pittsburgh. He's always wanted to play with his little brother. He was going to sign with the Steelers. 2, he went to Wisconsin, has always been a Packer fan. He's going to sign with the Packers because he's a lifelong Packer fan, always wanted to wear the mustard and relish. 3rd, he was going to sign with the Chicago Bears. The mustard and relish, exactly. He wanted to wear that. 3rd, he was definitely going to sign with the Chicago Bears because his wife played for the Chicago Women's Soccer League team, and they wanted to live in Chicago year-round. We were assured he was only going to sign with those 3 teams. That's what it was going to be. J.J. Watt then signs with the Arizona Cardinals. So insiders tweet things that people 3 and 4 people removed have said as if it's news. Chris Mortensen talked to the newsmaker and reported it in a newspaper. That's how the game has changed.
Yeah, well, we will get a little deeper.
Long story, I know, but
it's
always an important one for me.
No, it's a great story. I love it. And listen, I don't want to go into the weeds on this right now because we've got too deep of a show. But remind me at some point to tell you about the first story that I ever broke in my career. And I ended up actually, and it was a legit story. I did everything right. I ended up getting suspended from work because of the politics involved with breaking a story. That
Wow.
a small-
Wow.
I feel like I have to tell the story now, or it's going to be.
That's a hot story.
Yes, you do.
That's
You
a
can't-
hot story.
You can't tease that.
all
Yeah,
right.
you can.
Yeah, I mean,
Tease
I
that
can. Do you? I mean, I
Bitch,
do.
get in the game.
Bitch,
get in the game.
We got 30 minutes before Katie Wu joins us, and we have about an hour before Mayoko. Come on, tell us the story. Let's go.
Well, okay. I'll tell you the story in a minute. Let me just tell you the rest of the traffic for today. As you mentioned, Katie Wu coming on bottom of the hour as we continue our spring swing to talk St. Louis Cardinals today, who had an abysmal year last year. And by the way, St. Louis Cardinals, not that spring baseball matters all that much, guys. They played 9 exhibition games. They haven't hit a home run yet. That might be a problem.
Whoa.
That might be a problem. 9 games,
No
no home
bombs.
runs for the St. Louis Cardinals so far in spring training.
Dang.
Yeah.
Manufacture those runs, boys.
Yeah. So we'll talk to Katie Wu and then Matt Mayoko again to talk more about the NFL Combine and also.
Can I jump in real quick on this, Dave? Can I
Yeah.
just jump in? If we can, I don't know if you can. Can we roll on the Jason Kelsey news conference? He is at the microphone wearing his Eagles gear and speaking. He's retiring right now, and he is in tears.
Yeah,
he is bawling like a
I'm-
baby.
I'm looking at it right now. Matt, keep your eye on Twitter. They'll probably. I'm going to guess some people will tweet out some of the clips from this, so we can go ahead and pull something off of there.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny.
And
I
yeah.
actually.
I'm not being negative about the guy, but he's crying like a baby, but I mean that in a respectful way. I mean, the tears are rolling down his face, off his beard, onto the table. That's how emotional today is for him. That, to me, is what sport is. Go ahead.
For the first time, I normally don't put my TV on, but this morning I was like, I'm going to put my TV on because Coz always sees something good on TV, and I'm looking over, and yep, I'm seeing it exactly. And I got my little device here that would allow me to put TV live on our show, but I did not connect that, so I'll do that for tomorrow because, I figured out we're not going to use it, and now we could have used it. Anyway, so we'll get into that. We'll get Mayoko's thought on that as well. So it's good that we've got Matt coming on. So the other topic, I would love to be able to take some texts and some calls today, and some emails. By the way, I did go in last night and I updated lfgradioshow.com. So there are a couple of minor changes, but if you go there, it'll link you to the live stream if you want to watch it. And you can, get the link to be able to text the show, also to be able to email the show, lfgradioshow.com, and we're going to work more on that. We need to get a page up with all of our bios and all that. Anyway, the topic today, though, that fascinates me is this Joey Logano story from Las Vegas. He got busted basically cheating, wearing a webbed glove during qualifying for a race in Las Vegas over the weekend, and they caught him on camera, and then they went back, and they're saying now he may have been using that when he won the pole at the Daytona 500 a couple of weeks ago. And so the bigger topic is I'm fascinated about that, but I also like just cheating in sports in general, and we're not going to talk about steroids. More of the sublime stuff, corking a bat. What are some
What the Astros did? Does that count? What the Astros did?
That counts.
Yeah.
And I can remember. Who was it? It was Frank. I forget his last name right now. The center for the Packers on those really good teams that I covered. He would joke and say, "Well, if you're not cheating, you're not trying." So everybody's trying to find a loophole in the rules, and it's fascinating the science going behind Joey Logano wearing a glove to create drag, and it's illegal. So have you ever played sports? Have you ever tried to find a loophole in the rules? Let's not call it cheating. You've tried to find a loophole in the rules to give yourself an advantage. It's been going on since they've been playing sport. We want to hear from you. 352-234-TONY, 352-234-8669. Send us a text or email the show, lfgradioshow@gmail.com, and we'll get into that topic as we continue on here today. All right, you guys, you really want to hear this story about me getting suspended for breaking a story? Is this really?
You're just, you know what? You were doing your job.
Yes.
And you got suspended for doing your job.
Yes. So this is maybe why I soured on caring about breaking stories. It's not my thing. I consider myself. I want to be more of an entertainer than a journalist. It kind of is like nails on a chalkboard to me when somebody calls me a journalist. I'm working in my first full-time job in Utica, New York. There's a minor league hockey team called the Utica Blizzard, and I'm covering the team. And I'm right at that age where I'm in my mid to late 20s. I was like 25, 26 years old. So I'm pretty much the same age as a lot of these guys that are on this minor league hockey team. And so I befriend some of them because I'm covering the team all the time. And it becomes so they fire their coach at the end of the season. And during that summer, I'm hanging out. Some of these guys on the team, they're still hanging around town. We're going out and having beers together. And they end up telling me, they end up calling me, and they're like, hey, we just got told that the team's going to hire Donnie Martin, who was a player, as the head coach. And I'm like, what do you mean? Is Donnie retiring? And they're like, no, Donnie's going to be a player coach. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I call a couple of my other buddies on the team. They all, yep, we've all been told, yep, it's happening. So I call the GM/owner of the team, and I say, Jeff, the guy's name was Jeff Krupp. I say, Jeff, I've got it from multiple sources that you're going to hire Donnie as a player coach. I'd love to come down and be able to get a comment. And he says to me, my comment is, you better not go with that story. and I'm like, okay. So I go into my boss, my news director, and I tell him, I say, so here's the deal. I go, I've got it from multiple sources. Jeff doesn't want us to run the story. What do you want me to do? He tells me, he says, do you trust your sources? I say, yeah, totally. He says, all right. He's like, well, then go with it. So I go with the story on the 6 o'clock
But your boss
news.
said to go with it. You ran it by your boss. Your boss said go with it.
My boss said go with it.
Okay.
I go on.
You've
the
covered
air.
all your bases so far.
I go on
You've got multiple sources, and you've gone to your boss, and he gives you the go-ahead.
He gives me the go-ahead. So I go on the air, 6 o'clock news, and it's a 2-station market, right? So it's just me and the other station. We are the lesser of the 2 stations by far. They've got a bigger budget. They've got more people. We are the little engine that could. So most of the time, the other station is breaking the stories, not us. So I lead the sportscast with it, and the other station didn't have anything on it. So I'm feeling pretty good until the GM's receptionist comes walking into the newsroom and says, Paul wants to see you in his office immediately. And so I walk into our GM's office.
Are you thinking he's going to congratulate you and pop open a bottle of champagne because you broke his story and pat you on the back?
I don't know what's going to happen, but I walk into the office, and Paul says, I just got off the phone with Jeff Krupp. He has canceled all of his advertising with the station. And so my news director came into the meeting with me, and he goes, and Paul goes, why did you go with this story? And I go, well, I ran it past Gene. Gene said to go with it, and Gene just, I didn't realize that there was an issue. Gene totally threw me under the bus and acted like he had no clue. I ended up getting suspended without pay for 2 weeks.
Get out of here.
Got
Get out of
suspended
here.
without pay for 2 weeks.
That is
for
ridiculous.
breaking a story. And by the way, while I was out on suspension, the team held a press conference and they hired the guy as the player coach.
So you were right, and you got suspended for being correct.
Yes.
All right. That's how this business is, people.
And
That's
so-
just so you know.
You know what? That's really effed up. That's really effed up.
Hey, I don't know how much time we have. I'll give you I don't break stories. I'm not a journalist. I had one opportunity to break one thing, and I did, and it got poo-pooed. It was really funny. And I broke it. It was an NBA story. There was a time when the Bulls were going to trade Scottie Pippen to Seattle for the Rain Man. And I knew it because this is right around the time when Jordan was retiring and coming back. There was a little bit of news about that. Well, I had a guy who worked for Seattle who was in the room when the decision was made to make the deal. They agreed to the deal. The owner comes out, and it's around draft day, and the owner comes out at a rally, and word gets out that I broke it. And then he comes out and he says, we're looking at maybe adding one of the new, one of the great young stars from another team, and everyone starts booing him because they wanted to keep Sean Kemp. They didn't want Scottie Pippen. And I had reported that they were going to make this trade. The trade was agreed to prior to the draft. And the owner of the Sonics at the time then gets bad pub. Then he pulls out on the deal. And then I was doing a radio show at the time, and my partner said that deal was never going to happen. On the air, he says that deal was never going to happen. 2 days later, he's in Indiana, and he's in an elevator with Scottie Pippen's agent. And the agent said, that was a done deal. That owner did something stupid, and we had that deal already consummated, and everybody knew what was going to go on. My buddy comes on the air the next day with me and says, I've got a breaking news story. That deal was a real deal, and it did happen, and then Seattle backed out of it. I'm sitting there in the same room with the guy, and I'm like, wait a minute. That's the story I broke 2 days ago, and you laughed at me, and now you're taking credit for it. So it was quite the time. So I quit being in the breaking news game at that point.
Yeah. So you and I both had, I'm over it. I don't care about breaking stories.
Yeah.
And honestly,
nope.
Does the average person even really know today, like, oh, well, that story was broken by so-and-so? It's like, really, you know what? Get it right. And by the way, the lesson learned for me, the older, more seasoned, more experienced person, if I had been in my scenario, Coach, you did everything right, it sounds like, as well. For me, my lesson learned was, I would have, if I had a time machine, I would have, when I had that phone call with that owner GM, I would have said, okay, Jeff, I can see you're not ready to go with the story. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit on the story, but when you're ready to make the announcement, I want the exclusive. I want the first interview with Donnie, and I want the first interview with you,
right.
And I want you to do it live on our show. That's how I should have played it. But
that's the way to do it.
See,
yeah, exactly. But you know what? You had a story, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
See, I have a story about me breaking a news story, and there was no consequences to it. It actually went the way it was supposed to, but it was unique.
Did it involve the Warriors?
No, it's a news story. It was when I was it was when I was working up in Humboldt, and it's unique because it was literally my first day. I hadn't even reported to the studio yet, okay? But I had some numbers for some reporters. So I'm up in Humboldt, and my aunt is texting me. I just got up. My aunt goes to work. I'm staying at her place for a couple of weeks before I get my apartment situated. That's how early this was. And she texts me, and she's like, there's some guy with a gun at the end of the street threatening things and stuff. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, I'm just looking at him. And I'm like, what's happening? And so she's describing all this, and I'm writing it down. And then I'm like, all right, cool, I'll call you back. And so I called this reporter who's working at the station that I was started on the same day that I was, but he was in on the early shift. I was the late shift. So I called him, and I'm like, dude, get down to this street. There's some guy waving a gun around. And 6 o'clock news, that's what they led with. And the news anchor, who was also the news director, says, how about Matt? Our newest employee comes in before he even reports to work. He breaks the story. So that was pretty funny.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. Dave, getting back to your story, you said that, small town, you'd be out having beers with the guys after the season. You and I had a boss who once told me if I ever found out our reporters were out at a general manager's house at a barbecue or hanging out with guys, I'd fire them on the spot.
Really? That's well. I mean, I can understand. I can understand why someone might think that way, but at the same time, you break stories because you foster relationships, not because you cold call somebody and say, "Hey, what do you know?" I mean,
right? Exactly.
So, I've had bosses in the past who've been like, call everybody you know and find out. Like, that's not how it works. You don't break a story because you're calling somebody cold
Nope.
and saying, hey, what do you know? You know, you find out
No,
you got a relationship with somebody. Like, kind of like you with your story with Sean Kemp and Scottie Pippen. Because you had a relationship and you were in the inside and you were, you were trusted and people were comfortable with you. Stories kind of tend to find you when you're in that circumstance. If you go looking for them, you're not going to find them because people are always going to wonder what you're up to, and they're going to be turned off. By that.
Yeah, if you're always saying, "Hey, what do you got for me? What do you got for me? What do you got for me?" You know what? Pretty much you actually become the sucker, and they'll start feeding you wrong stuff to get that word out as well. And as we continue our how to view the media section level 100 course, there are many times in which people will give false information out in order to throw others off the scent. And so, and listen, you got to you got to know people. And I know even at ESPN, there are those who are upset with Adam Schefter because Adam Schefter will write a story, send it to the person he's writing the story about to get it cleared, and then release the story. And that doesn't sit well with many quote-unquote journalists because that's not breaking a story. That's being a PR agent.
Yeah, it's a
they're just jealous of Adam. That's what they are.
There's a balance. All right, we need to hit our first break. We need a Matt Fowler sports update on the other side. And then we're going to talk some baseball with Katie Woo. And we want your texts and your emails. Have you ever tried to find a loophole in sports, a.k.a. cheating? It's the Monday edition of LFG here on the Tony Bruno Sports Network.
All right, I'm going to do the update live because I was calling people and texting people, and I didn't have a time today to record it. So
Mayoka was also on the phone, you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if my message came through, but the press conference for Kels is going on.
Yeah, we're looking at it right now.
Okay.
In fact, you know what? I'm going to check Twitter quick and see if I can find anything, if there's anything on it. Why is Twitter not loading? Twitter's not loading for me.
See how long this lasts.
All right, I've got a Kelsey thing when we come back.
After the sports update?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, if you type in Matt Mayoko on Safari, and the first thing there's a picture of Joe Montana.
All right. Well, all right. I'm coming back, Rejoiner.
Welcome back to LFG. Let's go on the Tony Bruno Sports Network.
It's the bottom of the hour, or close enough. Time for your Tickscape Studios Sports Update with Matt Fowler.
Zach Wheeler has reached an agreement on a 3-year extension that begins in 2025 and runs through the 2027 season with the Phillies. And the deal is worth approximately $126 million. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and 5-time Pro Bowler Mike Evans have reached an agreement on a 2-year, $52 million contract. That includes $35 million guaranteed. For all the updates and best hot takes, tune into the Tony Bruno Sports Network on the TBSN app. Now back to Dave Benz and Jim Kozamore. This is LFG.
Can you do that LFG thing again?
This is LFG.
You're just dying for another drop, aren't you? Back here on Monday edition, Jim Kozamore, Jason Kelsey is still sitting in front of the microphone, and he started. This is the very beginning of his press conference. He didn't make it through 5 words before the tears started coming out.
Thanks for coming, guys. We'll see how long this lasts.
All right, listen. I don't want to just play audio of Jason Kelsey crying, but you get the point. Obviously, in a very emotional day for Jason Kelsey,
That's
and
something.
you know he. I think that's why people love him and his brother, right? Because they're just you feel like they're just ordinary guys, and you can relate to them, and they're so open and transparent, and that's really powerful stuff out of Jason Kelsey.
I'll tell you something. And if you follow it, it's still going on. And if you follow it, he's going almost like highlights of his career, biggest moments, big things he remembers, plays, games. He talks about the Super Bowl championship, and he says, I still remember Nick Foles being the biggest dick in the building and walking up to the head coach and calling for the Philly special. And then I remember the head coach standing there. His name, what was it, Doug Peterson?
Doug Peterson,
I remember
yeah.
Doug Peterson. He goes, Doug Peterson, who had the biggest balls in the building, calling for it. I mean, he is going over it right now. And I'll tell you, I love this about sport. These enormous behemoths who are freaks of nature really are just little boys in the end. He just had the biggest toy, his favorite toy in his life just got taken away from him, his game. And he's crying. The emotion that these guys feel for this is amazing to me, and that's what I love about sport.
Well, and the thing is, to play it at that level, it's such a finite thing, right? And you never know when it's going to be taken away from you. And, Coz, I know that over the weekend you texted that you figured out finally there is a way for you to watch The Dynasty, and I don't know if you've started watching it yet. But all I can tell you is I might have to go back and rewatch The Last Dance because it's been a few years since I watched The Last Dance, so I don't necessarily want to make a blanket comparison about which is better. But I can tell you that I am every bit as riveted to The Dynasty as I was to The Last Dance. And in some ways, the storylines with The Dynasty are just blowing my mind. And one of the storylines is when Tom Brady, they start off, the first episode is about Tom Brady kind of coming in to replace Drew Bledsoe, and Drew's the guy. And then all of a sudden, Drew goes out, and Tom's the guy. And then when Brady gets hurt, I don't know what season it was, 2012 maybe, Brady gets hurt in the first quarter of the first game of the season, and he's out. And Matt Castle comes in, and Matt Castle starts slinging it. And Brady is sitting there, and he's worried, like, am I done? Knowing that Belichick basically was like, yeah, Drew Bledsoe, you're our guy, and we paid you, we gave you a bank vault full of money, but you know what? None of that matters. Brady's our guy now. And Brady was sitting there with that same anxiety about, am I done? And so, to play this forward with Jason Kelsey, it's like these guys, they put their heart and soul into this, and they realize they feel like they're such an integral part of what happens in sport. And there's no doubt Jason Kelsey was an important part of the Philadelphia Eagles, right? But
Right.
you face your mortality on a day like this, and I think that's what is driving the emotion as much as anything, because you realize, as big a part of the cog as you were, as big a cog in the wheel as you were, that you know what? You're not indispensable. And guess what? Jason Kelsey isn't going to be playing next season, but the Philadelphia Eagles are still going to have football games, and the show is going to go on, and there's still going to be fans there cheering for the Eagles. And so I think that drives the emotion as much as any of it as well.
Yeah, exactly. It really, really does. And the best organizations do a great job of keeping their players involved in the organization. My guess is, no matter where Jason Kelsey ends up living, and I don't know where his home base is. A lot of these guys have other homes away from where they play. He and his wife may choose to spend most of the year in Florida. But the Eagles will do what they can to have Jason Kelsey around them to help out, whether it's public relations, whether it's community relations, whether it's helping out in coaching, whatever it is. I truly believe that, Dave. And I've worked for enough organizations, because before I started working for a group like NBC, I was working for teams. There are a number of owners who, when they buy a team, the history of that franchise begins with the moment they've written that first check. Everything that's happened in the past doesn't matter. Everything of their history begins when they own the team. That's the way it is. I'll tell you that. That's the way it is with the Sacramento Kings now. When Vivek Ranadive bought the team, he wanted nothing to do with remembering the past until his name got so kicked around in the media that he begged those guys to come back. And then the minute he could crap on him, he did. And I'll tell you, a lot of owners do that. Great organizations keep their... Hey, look at the Chicago Bulls. We talked about this on the show. Ring of Honor, retirement ceremony, and the greatest Chicago Bull of all time doesn't show up. That's not a good organization, is it? Don't you want your guys to think, yeah, I'm proud of that uniform. I was a part of it. I want to be around there.
Yeah, I think, I think it's an indictment. You have the greatest player ever in Michael Jordan. And then after that, your team doesn't even sniff the playoffs or anything.
Oh, you're forgetting about Derrick Rose. They were pretty good with Derrick Rose, man.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sniff the final.
They were good. No, they were good. But my deal is, why isn't Scottie Pippen around the team all the time? Why isn't Horace Grant around the team? Where's Michael Jordan around the team?
Listen, I've seen Scottie at games, during the time that, I'd see Scottie show up and be courtside, but never those guys together, right? But listen, I don't want to get off the rails too much on this, because we're talking about Jason, and Katie Woo's coming on, but in a few minutes. But the bottom line is, the question I do want to ask you, Coz, is Jason Kelsey, like, he's an unbelievable center for a really good football team. He's been really good at a long time. Mm-hmm. Is this on national TV? If his brother Travis was not dating Taylor Swift, like, I really think that's a serious question. I'm wondering your opinion on that.
Fair question. I'm currently watching NFL Network. I think, yes, this would be. He's a Super Bowl winner who is a character. He is a name. If there was no Taylor Swift, if there was no Travis Kelce, let's say Travis Kelce decided he wanted to be a chemical engineering major and now an astronaut, whatever he wanted to be, I still think on NFL Network this would make it. Now, I don't know about the other networks.
I've got ESPN on.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's on ESPN. It's been on ESPN the whole time. So
interesting.
Although it is the Pat McAfee show, and Pat McAfee is his own executive producer, and Pat McAfee might have been like, let's put this on, and that's less time that we have to fill today. So not that Pat McAfee's ever worried about filling time.
No.
He's got plenty to say. But I think it's a fair question, right? Because it's like a lot more people are interested in this. They see the name Kelsey. Oh, it's that's the effect. I think it's on NFL Network either way. I don't know if it's on ESPN for 20 minutes and and change and still going, if it's not for the Taylor effect.
You might be right on that. I wonder what the odds are that and this is not to disparage any age range, any person, any sexual orientation, anything like that, but I'm wondering if one of my daughters, I'll put it on my daughter. I was going to say high school girl. I'm going to say one of my daughters says to me today, hey, Taylor Swift's boyfriend retired today. right? Because they hear the name Kelsey.
Yep.
Probably don't know that Travis Kelsey has a brother named Jason, because my daughters aren't football fans, right? They know who Taylor Swift is. I wonder if one of my kids will text me today or say to me, hey, Taylor Swift's boyfriend retired today. Or did he quit today? They'll ask, did Taylor Swift's boyfriend
Did he quit to go follow Taylor around?
Yeah, I would. I'd be putting a ring on that thing, man. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, who's to say that
She'd give me
that's
the.
not gonna
She'd give
happen?
me the Heisman. I think she'd give me the Heisman.
Yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting thing to ponder. But Jason is he's putting it all out there right now. That's for sure. And real quick, back to the Dynasty Coach. You got to watch it, man. You got to catch up. The storylines. You forget about all these things that happen. I mean, you know, as you're going through them, you're like, oh yeah, but it's like all the wrinkles, man. The Bledsoe getting replaced by Brady, the Brady and Belichick dynamic. You know, the Spygate thing, and now the latest episode is about Aaron Hernandez coming in with Gronk, and then Aaron Hernandez and you know, Deion Branch telling stories about the things that Aaron Hernandez was doing in the locker room and just how bizarre he was. And, you know, and then he ends up getting arrested for and convicted of murder. And you know, and Robert Kraft.
Yeah, that was something. That was some story. You're right. You're right. I could still picture remember they had the camera and the detective goes up to the door and he answers the door and he kind of and then when they say he's under arrest, he kind of makes that face. Do you remember the video of that stuff?
Yeah, they show it. They show him coming up.
Oh!
Coz, the most amazing bit, though, is, and this is like, you look back on it and you're like, oh, is Katie on, Matt? I don't want to just go off on this if Katie's waiting.
She is ready, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll continue that on stuff on the Dynasty a little bit later. But let's continue our Spring Swing segment. We do it every day at 1:40 Eastern, 10:40 Pacific. We take you through Major League Baseball and talk about each team as we lead up to opening day. And today we are talking about the St. Louis Cardinals, and we're welcoming in Katie Woo, who writes for The Athletic and covers the Cardinals. And, Katie, thanks for taking some time for us here on LFG. I'm guessing you're still in Florida right now covering the Cardinals.
Well, guys, one, thanks for having me. And two, some bad timing on my end. We usually get 3 or 4 days off during the spring, so I took one today. And about 10 minutes ago, Sonny Gray left his start with an apparent injury of some sort. That's all the information I know, but certainly not good news if you are a Cardinals fan, as there's arguably no person more important to the Cardinals this year than Sonny Gray. So hopefully we'll have updates soon on that. But
all I know
not
is
a good start to the week.
I got to drop our breaking news sounder for that.
I love it, Katie. Breaking news even on your day off. I love it, Katie.
That might be better than the Matt Fowler story, breaking news before you even got to work. Yeah, Katie, that's a big deal for a Cardinals team that really is trying to piece things together. It was not a great year last year, just 71 wins. You know, we usually start off this segment by asking everybody, you know, what the biggest storyline in spring training is for the Cardinals. And I know that starting pitching and injuries are part of it. I know there's a lot of guys that have yet to play. Is that the biggest storyline for this team as they go through spring? Now almost halfway through.
Yeah, I think it's definitely starting pitching. I mean, the big storyline is, can this Cardinals team bounce back from their worst season in 30 years? I mean, it had been since 1990 since the Cardinals had lost more than 90 games. It was the first losing season under President of Baseball Operations John Mozeliak's tenure. The Cardinals just simply were not used to losing, and then they did so in horrible fashion last year. So the big question is can they bounce back in a relatively weak NL Central? You're looking at the rotation as the key to that. The Cardinals went out and they signed Sonny Gray, of course, Kyle Gibson, and brought back Lance Lynn, a former Cardinal, spent a good majority of his career in St. Louis. And the reasoning for them doing that was because they wanted innings. They wanted to shore up innings that they did not have last year. Now the question is, will that be enough? The Cardinals like their offense. I think their bullpen could be a little bit underrated. But the question, like it is almost every year for the Cardinals, is what can that rotation do?
Katie, I'm a Chicago Cub fan, so I don't like you to begin with. Actually, I love you. I'm not. I'm just joking. I know. You're a reporter. You're not a member of the Cardinals. You're a reporter. So I tease, but I will ask a Cubs, maybe a Cubs angled question. Wilson Contreras. At one time, he was thought to be the catcher of the now and the future, the Chicago Cubs. They went through some changes in their organization, and now he's a Cardinal. But I think it's fair to say underperforming. What has gone on with Wilson Contreras? Because I think at one point the Cardinals thought they were getting their catcher of the future.
So definitely when you compare what the Cardinals were expecting from a defensive replacement, I tend not to use replacement when comparing anyone to Yadier Molina, but for the sake of this conversation, I trust you guys will know what I mean. I think Wilson Contreras came in last year and performed up to expectations offensively. But the Cardinals, I don't know if they just didn't scout Wilson over the last 7 or 8 years or were convinced that this would have been an easier project, were disappointed by his defensive abilities. And in a way, I don't really necessarily think that's Wilson's fault, because last year he was exactly the kind of catcher that he'd been throughout his career. It was the Cardinals who had to adjust to a no Yadier Molina behind the plate. That's a significant drop-off no matter who you are. Now, I will say this for both Wilson and the Cardinals. I thought Wilson handled his demotion, if you remember last year. He was suddenly taken off of catching duties behind the plate right before his big return to Wrigley Field, so tough draw there. But handled that conversation really well, handled the controversy well. And now he's come to camp and he has a brand new stance. He's joining the wave of catchers that does the one knee down behind the plate setup. And I think the Cardinals have had to tweak their defensive process and how they evaluate catchers behind the plate and work with Contreras a little bit more. So I don't necessarily think Wilson underperformed. Again, I think he did exactly what they wanted to do offensively. I think the Cardinals organization underestimated just how difficult the transition of Yadi would be. But coming into the second half, or his second year, I've joked he's like the dad of catchers, because everywhere I look on the backfield, the Cardinals have a plethora of young guys behind the plate, and he's been mentoring every single one. So maybe it was just a matter of trying to get comfortable in that first year. That can be tough, but he certainly seems to be in a much better place coming into spring this year.
Speaking of guys capable of doing some mentoring, Matt Fowler, our producer, and I, Katie, we're out here in the Bay Area, so we got to see Brandon Crawford for a long, long time, and it's going to be really weird not seeing him in orange and black this coming season. What are the Cardinals expecting, hoping, thinking that they can get out of Brandon Crawford?
Well, one, I like you guys because I'm from Vacaville, so very familiar with the Bay Area, but also very familiar with Brandon Crawford, who was a big highlight for a high school me growing up a Giants fan. It's interesting that Crawford is a Cardinal, not just because it's really weird seeing him in red or anything that's really not orange and black, but because he wasn't really on the Cardinals' plans in the Cardinals' plans to bring in this year. The Cardinals are pretty confident that Tommy Edman, who used to be their shortstop, would be their opening day center fielder. He's a little bit delayed coming off of wrist surgery he had over the offseason. And they have this rookie phenom shortstop named Mason Wynn. He's 21 years old, and he will be their opening day shortstop. But when the Cardinals got to camp, they realized they'd probably better serve from a roster standpoint, especially if Tommy Edman isn't ready to go, by bringing in a veteran shortstop specifically to mentor Wynn. The Cardinals are facing significant pressure, not just to win, but to win early. And putting all of that pressure on someone who's just 21 years old, has less than 50 games at the major league level at shortstop can be a little tough. So John Mozeliak has always had an affinity for Brandon Crawford. He's always liked him dating back to the 2012 NLCS. And when that reserve infield market started to take flight really over the last week, the Cardinals made a call for Crawford and offered him a major league contract. The Giants were willing to offer Crawford a minor league contract. A big story from Andy Baggerly on The Athletic about how that went down. And next thing you know, over the course of 48 hours, Brandon Crawford was a Cardinal. But again, not something the Cardinals really sought out to do. It was when they got to camp, they realized, let's make sure we're giving Mason Wynn the best possible passing speed and put a veteran reserve shortstop, a guy that we like behind him, to motivate him there as well.
They're getting a real pro, that's for sure. Brandon Crawford is a grade A guy, man. Super great guy. I want to look at the NL Central. Typically, everyone thinks, well, Cardinals are going to be in it because they typically are in it. Last few years, the Milwaukee Brewers have been a part of that. But there are some teams starting to burble up a little bit. Reds made some noise last year. Pittsburgh has some talent over there. Cubs went and stole the Brewers manager. How wide open is the NL Central as we start 2024?
It's wide open. And I think a running narrative is that the NL Central isn't going to be very competitive. And I would like to push back on that. I do think it's going to be very competitive because you're going to have 4 teams winning about 85 games, and anyone can win the division. I mean, I'll put the Cardinals back up there. I know they had such a horrible season last year, but when you look at this division, I really do think anywhere between 85 to 90 games is going to be competitive. Is it going to be the best division in baseball? Certainly not. But you have 4 teams that you can make an argument for: the Cardinals, the Brewers, the Cubs, and the Reds, as to who can win the division. And honestly, when you look at how the rest of baseball is shaping up, if these teams want to make the playoffs, winning division is more or less their only option. I know we saw it last year. I think 88 wins got the Diamondbacks in, but with how heavy the rest of the NL West and the NL East is, your real sure shot into getting into the playoffs and not having to rely on a wild card seed is obviously winning the Central. So I'm not sure if I have a favorite here. I think it's gonna dictate, I think, the first half on who's gonna be a seller at the trade deadline or who's gonna be a buyer at the trade deadline. But for me, I do think it's going to be a competitive division, not necessarily in the number of wins, but just how tight all of these teams seem to be as we approach opening day.
Bay Area native and current St. Louis Cardinals beat writer for The Athletic, Katie Woo, is our guest here on LFG. Katie, I do have to ask you, how concerning. I don't personally read a lot into spring training because, at least not in terms of results, because, anybody that's been around the game long enough knows that, people are working on certain things. Hitters are working on certain approaches. Pitchers are working on certain pitches. So, wins and losses don't really mean anything. But one thing that does have my attention is the Cardinals have no home runs through 9 completed spring training games. That's a little bit concerning, isn't it, that they haven't hit one yet?
Yeah, it's pretty hilarious, actually, when you think about how dynamic their power is in that lineup. They have Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Contreras, Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm not necessarily concerned because spring games are simply that. And, there's only 1 or 2 at-bats from the starters per game. A lot of guys are working on things or tinkering their swings, but I do think it's weird. And I'm very much enjoying the concern from the fan base because, it's March 4th, and it's like, blow season up. The Cardinals haven't homered in 9 games. So I wouldn't call it a concern, but I do think it's a relatively funny development because no matter what, there's always one team that this happens to where they have this obscure stat where things just don't seem to be going their way. And given how dire the Cardinals season was last year, I think Cardinals fans are rightfully anxious about anything that could go slightly wrong. So I'm all for the spring overreactions. I'm not necessarily concerned that there hasn't been a home run. I'm sure they will get one. But if they go all spring without one, I actually think that's pretty impressive. So we'll see.
That's funny. Yeah, that's a good one. All right, we ask all of our guests a couple of baseball questions. I am going to take the bigger picture one about players coming up in the game. Typically, we ask this question, and everyone answers Shohei Ohtani, but I'm going to take Ohtani out of the mix, and I'll ask you, as you're covering baseball and you watch these teams and some of these young faces of the game start to grow, who do you see as a player when the schedule comes out and you circle the schedule and go, wow, I can't wait for this team to come in because I really want to see this guy? Or who's a young player who you think could be in the mix as a fun new face of the game in Major League Baseball?
This is a great question. I'm not going to necessarily go player specific because there's too many on the Baltimore Orioles for me to pick just one. But I find the Orioles to be must-watch baseball because they're so young. They were not good for so long, and I think they're an example. While I'm not necessarily a fan of the tank and rebuild process, they're an example of what happens if you do the process right. So you're looking at the guys out there. You're looking at Jackson Holliday coming up. You're looking at Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman behind the plate, just a mix of young guys on that Baltimore squad. And you saw what they did last year, winning 100 games. The AL East is kind of anyone's game because there's 4 really competitive teams out there, and then there's the Red Sox. But for me, every series that I'm looking at, when I'm looking at the calendar, I'm looking at when do the Cardinals play the Orioles, and I'm also looking at, on my off days, when do the Orioles play, just because they have such dynamic young talent. And I think they're going to be one of those teams that, kids that are in elementary school, middle school, they grow up and they talk about, hey, what was the mid-2020s of baseball? I think they're going to talk about the Baltimore Orioles.
Wow, that's really cool. We're actually going to be talking Orioles tomorrow on our spring swing, so that's a nice setup by you.
That's a great answer, by the way. It's a great answer because everyone, wouldn't you say, Dave, 8 out of 10 people are saying Shohei Ohtani, and the conversation stops there. We've had a couple of other names. I don't think I would have guessed Baltimore Orioles from someone, Katie. If you'd have spotted me 26 other teams, I still might not have said it. So I think your answer was the greatest answer we've had so far. Thank you for that.
Thank you. High praise. I appreciate that.
All right, last serious baseball question for you. We're having everybody answer this. Complete this sentence. The Cardinals will win the 2024 World Series if.
Oh man. If 85% of their roster has a career year.
Okay. Hey, it could happen. It's not.
Hey, you know what? This year, you just have to get in, right? And the way that baseball is trending, and if there's one team that's really good at getting in and then winning, it's the Cardinals. I mean, I think 2006, 2011, their last World Series win. So if they have a regular season that is of very, very high performance, then I'll take them. But certainly, I'm not going to go out here and proclaim that the Cardinals, after being last place and winning 71 games last year, are going to win the World Series. I'm just not going to say that.
Yeah. All right. Our producer, Matt Fowler, we got time for one more quick one. He's patiently been waiting to get into the mix. He's got one for you, Katie.
All right, Matt, hit me.
All right, Katie. So you and I are both Bay Area people, and you mentioned growing up being a Giants fan in the Bay Area, just like me going to high school. So what was your favorite memory from the 2010, 2012, or 2014 run?
Oh, man. I don't know if I'm supposed to pick just one. Probably the 2010 World Series win, because I've never experienced something like that, and that was peak Tim Lincecum. I love Tim Lincecum, an unhealthy amount. And just to witness what it meant. I mean, my dad has grown up in the Bay Area, and even though he grew up an A's fan, he's converted to Giants for me, which is true fatherhood. And to share that moment with my family and call my
dedication.
grandpa. I mean, that's dedication, exactly.
Yes.
So probably the very first one, especially now looking back at it with some nostalgic eyes, just knowing that it was just a precursor of what was more to come. I think 2010 will always be really, really special. My runner up would be the 2012 World Series parade, because my dad let me skip school to go, and it was awesome. And just seeing everyone hammered on Bart at 7:30 in the morning at 16 years old. I was like, is this what I have to look forward to? So that'd be my runner-up.
Wow. Well, Katie Woo, you were terrific, and appreciate you coming on. Hopefully we can talk to you again at some point as the summer continues, but enjoy your day off in Florida, and hopefully the sunny gray news is not too bad for the Cardinals.
You got it, guys. Thanks so much for having me on. We'll talk soon.
All
You're
right.
great, Katie.
That does it
She's
for
really great.
hour
I'm
one.
a huge fan. She was
and
great.
our spring swing. Yes, she was great. Appreciate the time. We're taking a time out. We're overdue for the top of the hour break. When we come back, we're going to talk more NFL with Matt Mayoko. Also, I'm going to tell you a record in sports that is currently active that I don't think is ever going to be broken. We'll have that ahead on LFG.
All my life I never stopped to worry about a thing. Open up and shout it out.
Did you like how I hit the post there, Coz?
Damn, that was sweet. That is solid work, man.
That was good.
That is my buddy and I. Did I tell you this story? My buddy and I, when we were driving to from L.A. to Vegas once, we spent the whole trip just doing DJ intros to every song that was coming on and seeing who could hit the post the most. That was a fun freaking game, man. That was a great time.
Yeah. Well, it helps when you know the song, right?
You got to know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you ever a DJ? Because I used to have them where it told you how many seconds
on
were
the
leading
cart,
up.
like we had a cart.
Yes, on the cart machine. Yes.
So as I've told you guys, one of my good buddies is the guy that wrote Hotel California, Don Felder, and he told me that
he wrote that song.
He did.
That is mailbox money. You never have to work again.
Yeah, no, he does not. I told him, I said, that song made you a couple bucks, right? 20, 40 bucks maybe. He says, yeah, 20, 40 bucks. But he said the DJs hated it because, that guitar intros, I'm sorry, no, they loved it. The executives hated it. The DJs loved it because they could go out and smoke a cigarette while the guitar intro's playing for a minute,
Yep.
But the executives hated it because that format, FM format, was, it's got to be like no longer than 3 minutes. The DJ can't talk so long, and all that. So it's kind of funny about that.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's modern day poetry, man. I actually think that's what rap is. Rap is modern day poetry. Everyone says, where are all the poets? I think that's what rap is. Rap is modern day poetry.
Yeah.
I would not disagree with that. I'm just I'm putting up a Matt Mayoko picture. So I was telling you guys, if you type in Matt Mayoko on Safari and just hit return, a picture of Joe Montana comes up. I don't know who put that up there. That's
Wow,
interesting.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, I am turning on the mics, and I'll play the intro.
That's a big fella right there. Oh, man. Come on, Tavondre. That poor kid holding the...
Live from the Tickscape Studios. Let's f***ing go.
Welcome back. Hour 2 of LFG here on TBSN. That's a lot of letters for you. Go to lfgradioshow.com, or you can go to your phone and text us 352-234-8669. On the backside of Matt Mayoko, he's coming up in 4 minutes. We will get into what happened with Joey Logano, and I want to know about loopholes in sports. And then also later on the show, I do want to tell you guys a record that is active in sports that I think will never be broken. And the catalyst for that is what we saw with some scoring records fall this weekend, with Caitlin Clark passing Pistol Pete Maravich, and also LeBron James getting over 40,000 in the NBA. But I've got one record.
Not that hard.
I think that's not that hard. I think both those records are going to be tough. Probably Caitlin Clark's record falls first because there's a lot of really good young talent playing college basketball. LeBron's record might stand for a really long time, but I got one that probably is up there with the DiMaggio 56-game hit streak that is never going to get touched. So we'll get into that. But before Katie was on, and since we're going to go back to NFL, Coz, I just want to finish the thought on the Dynasty.
Yes.
What is amazing is the footage that they were able to get they have footage of the 2010 NFL Rookie Symposium. They have Chris Carter up at the front of the room talking to the players. And in the crowd, as rookies, are Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. And Chris Carter is sitting there and telling the rookies the story about how he got cut by Buddy Ryan in the Eagles, and he realized right then and there he needed to change the people he was hanging out with. He needed to quit smoking the chronic. He needed to start taking his body seriously and his career seriously. And, it's kind of like being a parent, right? You can tell your kid all you want, brush your teeth every day. Brush your teeth. You're gonna end up getting cavities and you're gonna regret it. Brush your teeth. They're not gonna listen to you because they think they know it all, right? And so, and by the way, that's a personal experience. Unfortunately, the battle I have with my 15-year-old son still.
I think a number of us have that same thing. And the sad thing is, Dave, random stranger could be walking down the street and say to your son, "Hey, you should brush your teeth. It's good for your teeth." And all of a sudden, it is gospel. It is the most important, smartest information that kid's ever. That happened to me so many times I lost count. So you have me to commiserate with on that scenario.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's a little bit of a problem. But so Chris Carter's up there, and he's talking to these players, and he's telling them, "Hey, you got to change your group of friends, whatever, blah blah blah." And Aaron Hernandez, of all people, asks the first question to Chris Carter, and they've got tape of this, mic in hand, and he says, what was the biggest change that you made between your time when you got cut by the Eagles and you went to the Vikings? And Chris Carter gave this really good, really insightful answer, and he's like, the bottom line is they will find out. If you do something wrong, you will get caught. And it's like, my God. The fact that they've got this footage, and it's just, it almost gave me chills. The first of all, that it happened. Second of all, that they've got footage of it. And I was texting a little bit with my girlfriend last night about it, and she's like, well, don't you know all these stories already? And I'm like, yeah, I know them, but I didn't know this happened at this symposium. And
it's a difference between hearing about it, knowing it, and seeing it play out. Those are all different scenarios.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just it's unbelievable the what they have, and I just yeah. Anyway, Matt Mayoko is joining us on the phone line. Matt is the 49ers insider for NBC Sports Bay Area, and he was at the Combine. Matt, good to have you back on, my friend. I'll ask you first, since we were just talking about it, have you been watching the Dynasty, and has it blown your mind?
I have not watched it, so it has yet to blow my mind. But hearing you talk about it, I've been the last few weeks have been kind of crazy. The last 3 months have been kind of crazy, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to be watching shows and whatnot. But hearing you rave about it right there, I'll get on that one for sure.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. Even if you don't like the Patriots, I mean, just the fact, the storylines that they went through with that franchise are amazing. But Matt, let's talk to you about something you do know well, which is the NFL, the Combine. I know you were in Indy. What were your overall impressions of what went on there, and bigger picture about just what an event this has become? Something that was really, I mean, even 10 years ago, I don't think it was as big as it's become now.
Yeah, I think it just gets bigger every year, and I know there's talk about moving it out of Indy and maybe monetizing it even more, but I think that would be a bad mistake. Indianapolis really has it dialed in. It's been the site of the Combine for 37 years in a row. It's an easily walkable downtown, not a whole lot of traffic. The hospital situation is set up well to handle 300 plus prospects coming in, and all the MRIs and all the tugging and pulling that all the draft prospects have to do. And that's kind of the main thing. The on-field work, no one, I don't think, has ever dropped or risen too much from the on-field work. I think teams like to see the 40 times just to see if the numbers match up with what their eyeballs think about the speed of certain players. But the medicals and the interviews, those are kind of the key components of this. And I always laugh because there's all kinds of social media about this team met with this guy and this team met with this guy, and oh my gosh. And the fact of the matter is, each team is allowed 45 formal interviews, but in addition to that, unlimited number of informal interviews. And so basically all 32 teams are going to meet with every draft prospect in the lead up to this draft, but it gives them an opportunity to meet face to face and all that. As far as, this particular draft, because I cover the 49ers, my angle of that is that this draft lines up pretty well for where the 49ers needs are. It's much better with offensive linemen than it was a year ago. It's very deep in the middle rounds with cornerbacks and a lot of guys who project well to the nickelback position. And then 49ers are looking for some more depth, and at wide receiver, this is a good draft for them. So it should be an interesting draft, and it was an interesting week in Indy.
Matt, we always hear about the workouts, the speed, the times, the jumping, the lifting, all of that stuff with athletes. But how much other NFL business goes on during this week-long stay in Indianapolis, or roughly a week-long stay? How much GM to GM contact is there? How much GM to agent contact is there? And what other business goes down that maybe is laying the groundwork for things to happen in the next 30 days?
Yeah, I'd say even the next 10 days, next week.
Wow.
The free agency begins really soon. And so I would say with that being kind of the center of the NFL world, yeah, what you mentioned is more important than the on-field workouts with the players. It's the GMs, it's the contract negotiators talking to agents. And, for instance, let's just say, 49ers need to get a deal done or they're eyeing getting a deal done with Brandon Ayuk. He's under contract for this coming season at $14.7 million on the fifth year option. You can be sure that the 49ers spoke with Brandon Ayuk's agent there about kind of a time frame of when you want to get together and start looking at this. And so it's GM to GM talk. It's GM to agents. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And one of the, or sometimes even out in public, I mean, it's one of the interesting things about the combine is basically you go into any bar or St. Elmo's, the steakhouse with their great shrimp cocktail, and you walk through any door late in the evening, and it's a who's who of the NFL world with agents, with coaches, with executives, and with a lot of media people crawling around too. So it is an interesting time, and there's a lot of information that's floating around. Some of it is very relevant, and others, maybe some smoke screens or whatnot. But yeah, it is definitely a time when there's a lot of discussions and laying of the groundwork, and even a team, let's just say, the Chicago Bears. I would not expect them to trade the number 1 overall pick. So this is probably a bad example, but there are teams talking to other teams saying, hey, what do you think about that pick? How open are you? Or even, the middle of the first round, like, hey, if our guy is still there at 13, would you be willing to trade back, to our spot, if things kind of work out, just kind of putting it on the radars, because a lot of those, I'd say almost all of the trades you see in day one of the draft, that the groundwork has been laid for those. Hey, if your guy is there, we wouldn't mind trading back. That kind of thing, and so that all started in large part this last week in Indianapolis.
Yeah, so many things, and another thing that's more rules than player movement. But guys get together, they talk. There's a lot of smoke coming, Matt, about NFL kickoff changes. It makes me believe that there probably is actually going to be a fire associated with this, and changes are coming. Would you agree? And what do you think it's likely going to look like?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably time that they eliminate the kickoff altogether. I mean, it's become the most anticlimactic play in all of sports. Maybe replacing the intentional walk in baseball. It's all the buildup. I mean, I remember for the Super Bowl. Here's the opening kickoff, and all the flashes are going off, and then it's just like. And then someone just pops the air out of the balloon. It's like, oh, okay, they start on the 25-yard line. So they got to look at that. I know the incidence for injuries is higher on kickoffs. That's why they've made certain changes to it and kind of promoted the touchback as being the optimum way for kickoffs to go. So at some point, I don't know when it'll be, but at some point, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think most people would just be encouraged to just say, get rid of it altogether. I mean, it is an exciting play when, the ball lands, at the goal line or the 1 yard line. But it has become just a formality that probably makes more sense just to abandon altogether.
I don't know, Matt, if you ever had a chance to see, and I don't imagine that you would, the old XFL rule of the kick. The only two people who could move on the kickoff are the return man and the kicker. The team receiving the ball is lined up, all 10 guys, and then the return man is back at the goal line. All 10 guys are lined up at their own 30-yard line, and all of the kicking team's defenders are lined up at the 35-yard line. And they cannot move until the ball is returned. Did you get a chance to see that at all? I think that's one of the options being talked about.
Yeah, I think I'm not as familiar with that, but okay. I have heard that is, on the table as one of the options. And that has been asked about, is that something the NFL would consider, and it does sound like they're open to, considering kind of out of the normal realm of what we've become, conditioned to over the years. So, I don't know which way it's going or when the NFL competition committee is going to meet. I know they certainly wanted to use all that data that they got from the XFL and from watching it and kind of seeing, the different elements to it, what works about it, what doesn't work, what are the risk of injuries. It sounds like that is, you're really limiting, the high-speed collisions. So that is definitely something that the NFL would be interested in.
Matt Maiocco, 49ers insider for NBC Sports Bay Area, is joining us. Matt, I want to transition real quick to Chris Mortensen. And when you think of great insiders, you think of Chris Mortensen. And, we were on our call this morning, as we always do before the show, to kind of talk about the show. And I'm like, the thing about Mort was just how he won the respect of both the players and GMs as well as the audience and the viewers. And I thought, and Matt, I mean this as high praise to you. I feel like you have that same association, maybe not on a national level, but on a regional level with people who follow the 49ers. When you put something out, people listen, much like they did with Chris Mortensen. I'm just wondering, your thoughts on Mort. I'm sure that you rubbed shoulders with them on a few occasions. Do you have any thoughts, and do you have any stories on Chris Mortensen to share?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And thank you very much for that. That's high praise being put in the same sentence as Chris Mortensen. But no, he was an icon. He was one of those very first guys, the information gatherers that made the move from newspapers to TV. And I remember the first few owners meetings or first few combines that I would go to, observing him. This is a guy that, before all this proliferation of media and everything else, I mean, he was one of the very first guys. And so, he did command respect. He earned respect is probably the better way of putting it. And watching him go about his business and seeing the respect that he had from other media members, as well as what you mentioned, team executives and coaches and all that. Everybody knew Mort. And I mean, I remember, the first time going up to him and introducing myself, and he, kind of shocked me by saying, "Oh, Matt, I know who you are. I've been reading your stuff for years, and it's a pleasure to meet you." And I thought, oh my gosh, I thought, is this real? That Chris Mortensen would know who I was. And through the years, he was always so kind, so generous, so inviting, never, ever, big time to anybody that I could tell. And, I mean, it would be a stretch to say that he and I were like best friends or anything, but we were definitely acquainted and very much on a first name basis and on really good speaking terms. And I was just kind of always amazed that a guy who had reached, the absolute top of his profession and had been there for so long and had a name. I mean, all you had to do was say Mort, and everybody knows who you're talking about. And so the way he treated me, forever grateful for that. It means something when someone you look up to treats you that way. And so it's very sad. I mean, he's been battling this. I've seen him, multiple times since he first started battling throat cancer, and his cheerfulness, his attitude never seemed to waver at all. So obviously very sad news for the football world and anybody who likes good people. And Chris Mortensen was definitely a really good person.
And Matt, you're very gracious with your time. Thank you. But I'll share this with you. As you know, I now live in Tennessee, and I follow a bunch of different people in Tennessee and listen to different podcasts. And there was one young man, and he did a podcast for the Nashville Predators. But he was leaving that job as a podcaster for the Preds to take another media job. And I listened to his last show. And in his last show, he said, I really want to move up in my career, and this is an opportunity for me to do that. And he said, there are some writers out there who I watch around the country who don't even know who I am, and I'm big fans of, and I want to be like them. And the guy said, and I'm listening to this, and he said, there's a guy in San Francisco named Matt Mayoko, and I love reading his stuff, and he does stuff on the radio, and he does stuff on television, and that's what I'd like to model my career to be. And I thought, wow, first of all, I know Matt. I'm friends with Matt, and I'm so glad I got to share that story with you as we talk about the greatness of how Mort was with you. You don't know who you're going to influence around in this world. Here in Tennessee, there's a kid who knows Matt Mayoko, and he knows what you do, and he wants to do it.
Wow. That's great. Will you do me a favor? Will you shoot me a text and give me his contact information?
Sure, if I can find it. Yeah, I'll see if I can find it. Yeah, if I can find it, I'll do that. I'll even see if I can find the podcast. I'd be happy to. I'll work at finding it, Maddie.
That is
cool.
That is awesome.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah,
Sure.
That is awesome. Matt, I'm going to let you go, but real quick, St. Mary's, what happened? I know you're a big St. Mary's fan. They had a big one at home against Gonzaga over the weekend. It didn't turn out well. And are they still going to get in? They're still going to get in, right?
Oh, well, I mean, they won the WCC outright, so they beat Gonzaga up there in Spokane. And so they finished conference play with a 15-1 record. Gonzaga was 14-2. So next up is the WCC tournament. But so they clinched the outright conference on Thursday. And I mean, there's nothing to say. Gonzaga worked them over pretty good Saturday night. It was a 13-point game, but it kind of seemed a little bit more lopsided than that, to be honest with you. So hopefully there will be a rubber match in Vegas, but I do believe at this point, I would be really surprised if it's not, the WCC is not a two-bid league. So I think Gonzaga's in, I think St. Mary's is in, and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, Matt, always appreciate your time. And we've got Patrick Stevens, a bracketologist, coming on tomorrow. So I'll ask him about how safe St. Mary's should feel for you. But always good to talk to you, my friend. I'm sure I'll be bumping into you soon enough. And thanks for carving out some time for us.
All right, Dave. Coach, thanks so much for having me.
And I'm working on getting that guy's name right now, as a matter of fact.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Cool.
That. That'd be awesome.
All right.
Sure. The great Matt Mayoko. That was fantastic. Give him a little sounder. Matt's just so good. Such a great guy. And I meant that, by the way. I mean, a lot of people, you just underscored exactly what I said in the middle of that interview, by the way.
Yeah.
Matt is not Chris Mortensen, but people who follow the NFL, they know Matt. And Matt is cut from that same kind of cloth as Chris Mortensen was. If he says it, you can believe that it's been vetted. It's coming from a trustworthy source. He knows his stuff, and he's well-liked, and he's a great guy. So it's a pleasure to have him on.
And if anyone who's listening, part of what Dave and I talk about a lot is the industry. And if you want to get into the industry, that's one thing. That's a great note. Own your beat. When I was in the Bay Area, you're in the Bay Area. I got to be honest with you. They were blessed to have some of the best beat writers in football, Matt Mayoko, Matt Barrows. In baseball, all the guys who cover the Giants were fantastic. Why does the woman's name who covered the A's, who now covers the Giants, why does her name escape me?
Susan
And she was
Slusser?
fantastic. Susan Slusser owned the Oakland A's beat. She owned it. If she wrote about it, you knew it was so. If you can own a beat, boy, I'll tell you, you could do some great things and make a great career for yourself. And the Bay Area had some of the best.
Yeah. All right, while we were on with Maddie, I mentioned St. Mary's. I mentioned college basketball. Of course, the big story in college basketball over the weekend was this.
This for college basketball history. She does it with a foul shot. Caitlin Clark becomes the all-time leading scorer in major college basketball history.
So that's the great Gus Johnson with the call as Caitlin Clark goes ahead of Pistol Pete Maravich for the all-time college basketball scoring record. And she's already announced she's going to go into the WNBA next year. She's going to forego a year of eligibility. Coach, listen, I think it's an amazing story. Caitlin Clark is somebody who I probably should take more time to watch. I admitted to you on our call this morning, I've never actually watched her play live. I've seen plenty of highlights on SportsCenter, but it's not something where I've been like, oh, I need to watch Iowa basketball. It's not like I've avoided it purposely. It's just that it hasn't been high enough on my radar, and I'm feeling like I should probably give this a little bit more merit. I mean, she's doing amazing things. And you know, the fact that she did this, and I know there are some detractors, and you know, listen, Pistol Pete played without a 3-point line. That is a big deal. When you're getting an extra point, it's a huge deal. But I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, she shouldn't be getting the accolades she's getting. Obviously, what she's done is absolutely amazing and historic.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's a fantastic story. We have a family friend who goes to the University of Iowa, and they really are wrapped up in this story. There are people who drive for hours and hours to go and watch Iowa Hawkeyes women's basketball because she's such an amazing competitor, and she is a generational talent. I agree. If you want to get into the debates of is she doing what Maravich did? Well, you're right. Maravich didn't have the 3-point line. Also, Maravich only had 3 seasons. He couldn't play varsity basketball as a freshman. That was the rule at the time. But still, for what she's doing for her time in the way the game is played, she is miraculous. She is the greatest scorer in the women's game, and I think that's a fantastic thing. To be up there with Lynette Woodard, who many consider to be the greatest female player of all time, I think is says enough. I do think sometimes they'll bring in the Pete Maravich name to try and give you an equaling factor, to give you maybe the, you know, I've maybe many more people have heard of Pete Maravich. Maybe now they have. Matt's a good case study. Matt, did you know who Pete Maravich was before all this started?
I did.
You did? Did you know how phenomenal he was? Or did you just know him as another great player?
No, I've heard stories. Actually, my aunt was a huge Pete Maravich fan, so she would tell me that he would drive and he would bounce the basketball outside of his car as he would drive along the side streets.
Amazing drills that he did, and his biography is amazing in his story. He also had a very tortured off the court life, but man, on the court he could play. Fantastic. But to get back to Caitlin Clark, what she's doing, Dave, I agree with you. But I cannot honestly look you in the eye and say, you know, I've been looking to see when Iowa women's basketball is, and the next time I'm going to watch it, like, are they playing Tuesday night at 7 to plant myself in front of the TV? I have not made it appointment television. Maybe that's on me, but I think I just have more options than that.
Well, the big question is, and I don't even know what is the Iowa women's basketball record. I mean, I know that they're one of the top 10 teams, and they're going. Can she make noise in the women's NCAA tournament? That's probably when I'm likely to turn it on, right? I know it's her last NCAA tournament. Can Iowa make a run in the women's NCAA tournament? That's when I'm probably going to be like, you know what, I'm going to watch Iowa play today. That's probably going to get my attention.
You know Jay Williams, a former NBA player before he got into the motorcycle accident, his career was cut short. Now he's on television on ESPN. He said they were having a discussion about Caitlin Clark and women's basketball, and he said Caitlin Clark is not the greatest women's basketball player of all time. And he took a lot of heat for that, all right, because immediately social media is going to call him a misogynist or in some cases a racist, or whatever you're supposed to call people that particular day.
But he said woman, though. He said greatest women's player. So
right, he said she's not the greatest women's player, right?
Right, but who did he say was?
He said, I've seen Diana Taurasi play. I've seen, and he mentioned another player, and I don't remember who that other player was. But he said, I've seen that other player play, and I'm telling you, I don't think she's the greatest women's player of all time. Now, let me give you my opinion about all of that. I don't know if she's the greatest player of all time. But until we can have friendly discussions and arguments about women's sports the way we do about men's sports, then women's sports are never going to elevate to the level of men's sports. If we have to walk around on eggshells in a DEI world, you know what? The debate of Caitlin Clark versus Diana Taurasi is a debate of Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. Why is that any different? And I don't like Jay Williams. I think his takes are hackneyed. But I got to say, he opened the door to a legitimate women's basketball discussion, and everyone wanted to cut him down for being misogynist.
And Coase, when you're comparing two female players, like that should be okay. I think
yes.
the debate of oh, Maravich's record is better, like that's really radioactive, right? You don't want to touch that because then you're throwing a wet blanket on what Caitlin Clark has done. Okay,
15-3, by the way, 15-3.
Yeah, so I'll pay attention to them in the women's tournament. The other big record from basketball happened over the weekend. It wasn't a record, but it was a major plateau, and it involved LeBron James. Matt, do you want us to go heavy here, or do you want me to tease through the break? What I
want
think
you to play LeBron James.
Hold on. Wait, I could get to LeBron James. I try to reorder
Anytime
my
we talk
soundboard.
about him.
Here we go.
Yeah, you do.
Here we
You
go.
do you alphabetical?
I'm gonna get that soundboard, by the way.
Well, I've been telling you for a long time.
There
you
we
go.
Let's
Text me the website I need to do because I want to learn how to do that. I will do that. I will spend the whole day just doing that.
Okay.
Let's tease that. Let's tease that on the other side of the break.
All right. When we come back, we'll talk more about
LeBron James.
And the
funny.
record that he has, the record that he has that I think is up there with the DiMaggio 56-game hit streak that is never going to be broken ever.
That's a tease.
And
That's
it
a
is
tease.
still an active record. That's what's really the crazy part about it. It is still going.
I mean, it's in process. It's in process right now.
It's in process, and there is no sign of it slowing down. So that is amazing. So we will have that coming up. On the other side of this timeout, you're listening to the Monday edition of LFG here on the Tony Bruno Sports Network. All right. I never even checked the email today. I don't know if anybody texted in. We did. We got a bunch of texts. Oh, no, these are from March 1st. We got one text today.
It says, you guys suck.
Oh, somebody said that Logano was busted in Atlanta, not Vegas. Okay. I guess they had the press conference yesterday. So, Coz, the website, it's called, just Google VoiceMod, voicemod.net. And then you can go in and you can create a soundboard. But I'll have to get
And you scored points with your son when he saw you had voice mod? Is that right?
Kind of, yeah. I'll have to
Is it get voice mod free? Is that what you do?
Yes.
It says get voice mod free?
But in order for you to make it work, you're going to have to install something called Loopback on your laptop. I can walk you through that because Loopback is what allows you to be able to play it and loop it into your mic. So it's an add-on app that I have a password and a thing for that I can hook you up with.
LeBron James. And then
I'm
you can add sound clips, or do they have them there for you?
No, they've got some. You can both. You can add them, and they have some for you. But they don't let you rearrange the order, which is I'm a little bit. So what I've done is I've created you can create multiple soundboards. So as of now, I have 6 soundboards. So at least I have some organization to it. But my main soundboard still has 40 clips on it. So sometimes it takes me a minute to find the one I want to find.
All right.
Don't.
No way.
Are you doing this update live?
Yeah.
How long do we have?
39 seconds.
Oh.
All right, turn on the mics.
Welcome back
It's the bottom of the hour, or close enough. Time for your Tickscape Studios Sports Update with Matt Fowler.
Zach Wheeler has reached an agreement on a 3-year extension that begins in 2025 and runs through the 2027 season with the Phillies. And the deal is worth $126 million. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and 5-time Pro Bowler Mike Evans reached an agreement on a 2-year, $52 million contract that includes $35 million guaranteed. For all the latest news, updates, and hot takes, tune into the Tony Bruno Sports Network on the TVSN app. Now back to Dave Benz and Jim Kozimor. This is LFG.
Oh, are we back? Sorry, I was just finishing some side work there. Back on the Monday edition of LFG. And I'm gonna throw Bisa a curveball because Bisa, our fantastic intern in Las Vegas, has been sitting there monitoring the show and taking care of our social media as always. Bisa, I'm gonna tell you to come on with us right now, if you can open your mic and your camera, because I've got a burning question for Bisa. Which is Bisa Earl. I know we got to talk a little bit before the show today. I didn't know that you are from Milwaukee and you grew up a Brewers, a Bucks, and a Packers fan. I just want to know if you took any umbrage with the green and gold being referred to as the mustard and relish earlier today by Coz.
I mean, we're cheese heads. I mean, it fits.
That's true.
Yes, it does. It's true. It does fit. Not a slacker fan. Not a big fan, Bisa. If I'd have known that going into this whole process, I might have vetoed this hiring. I'm not so sure.
Oh, wow. That's harsh.
As a Bears fan, I'll tell you, you guys have owned us for most of my life.
Coz wasn't even there at the Super Bowl. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Sorry.
True.
Bisa's been crushing it. She's been doing all our social media. She put a link tree for us together yesterday. Coz was like, "Wait, what's a link tree?"
Yeah, she gave us. Yeah. She texted us a sentence that were all words in the English language, but I had no idea at all what she was talking about. It was hilarious. I was like, all right, yeah, I'm all for it, but I have no idea what that sentence means. Bisa, you can link all your socials to the link tree. Get us this and that. Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Bisa, real quick, greatest Green Bay Packer. How would you rank your fanhood? Are you Packers first, Packers, Bucks, Brewers? Like, are they in any particular order?
I just eagerly have to rep them. You know, I try to go to some of the Packer bars here. It doesn't feel
Do you miss
right.
cheese curds? Bisa, do you miss the cheese curds, do you?
Yes, and in Wisconsin, if you're ever there, there's a place called Mars Cheese Castle. It is a big castle, nothing but cheese, and it's beautiful.
It's truth in advertising, man.
So Bisa, Giannis or Jordan Love, who are you giving a table to if you're working at a restaurant and there's only one table left?
They can't share.
Good answer.
Can't we all just get along?
I'm loving what Giannis is doing and like bringing back. Like I haven't seen Milwaukee and like the city be so together, and I'm like, man, you guys do this after I leave. But then when you think like Jordan Love is just, it's Jordan Love. It's like I don't know. I don't want to choose. I'll choose
Packers,
me.
man.
I'll leave.
What if Giannis smiles at you a little bit more than Jordan?
He might get me with that accent. He might.
All right.
Bisa, did you see the Jordan Love story where there was a snowstorm and he was leaving? You just say he was at a store, he got into his truck and he was leaving, and a woman was caught in a snowbank, and he drives his truck away, and then he turns around, comes back to the parking lot. It's a strip mall. He gets out of the car and he walks up to the lady and goes, "Excuse me, ma'am, do you need help with your car?" And the woman looks up and she goes, "You're Jordan Love." And he just goes, "I know that, yes, ma'am, but would you just need help with your car?" And she was too awestruck, she got her camera out and she was taking selfies, but he tried to help her move her car. Like, what a decent human being, right? Starting quarterback for an NFL team in the playoffs in a snowstorm, and he drives back and says, "Hey, ma'am, do you need help with that car? I'd be happy to help you with that." So I actually don't like the Packers, but I found that to be a sweet story.
I will say, when it comes to a lot of Wisconsin athletes that represent the different teams, I never hear of like anything bad. Like they'll be out and about in Milwaukee and Brookfield and all the other places, and like they'll just walk around like the county fair. Like they'll just be there, and I love that. I'm so happy I don't hear this person's like a douche and this person is just so horrible.
I just love
Good.
that she just used the word that this person's a douche. That's
I know. That's solid.
Bisa, we
That's a
need
solid cut down.
we need you to make a drop of you saying this person is a douche.
Yeah, okay. Well, Matt, you're the
Yeah,
producer.
clip that off.
You're the producer, Matt. You work on that. All
Well, no,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll do that.
All right. Well, Bisa, appreciate it. Keep up the good work, and we love having you on board.
Thank you.
All right. By the way, speaking of Good Samaritan stories, Coz, I'm going to get to the record thing real quick, but I just want to.
Okay.
Braylon Edwards, did you see this story out of Detroit?
Wow.
Braylon Edwards was at a YMCA, former NFL wide receiver, and he heard a commotion in the locker room. And at first he ignored it. Then he heard a thud, so he went to investigate. And some 25-year-old was beating the living tar out of an 80-year-old. And the 80-year-old was probably, and according to reports, like he had to go to the hospital and was likely going to die had this not been broken up. And Braylon Edwards intervened and got the guy away from the 80-year-old and ends up being a hero. And so you love hearing stories like, you don't love hearing about the beating part, obviously, but you love hearing that Braylon Edwards broke it up, saved this 80-year-old man's life, has checked on him in the hospital. And, oh, yeah, by the way, I would say probably also saved this 25-year-old man's life because this guy's probably going to still be in a ton of trouble and probably going to be looking at some major jail time for assaulting an 80-year-old, but it's not going to be a murder charge, which is what this kid could be facing.
Yeah, right. You know what? You're absolutely right. When you sent that story over and you read it, you think, wow, Braylon Edwards saved that old man's life. No, he saved the young man's life, too, right? Because that young man, if he ends up murdering that old dude, that young man's life is over, right? He's going to prison. He's going to prison for a long time. So Braylon Edwards saved 2 lives on the same day. But it speaks to the greater issue in our society of lack of decency and respect. You know, this whole argument was over someone playing music too loud. I'm going to guess the 80-year-old wasn't cranking Frank Sinatra too loud in the men's locker room. I'm going out on that limb, all right? And the young guy had a problem with it. I'm thinking it was the other way around. You know what? We all did stuff that wasn't great when we were younger. All of us did. I'm as guilty, maybe more guilty than anyone. But we usually, when an older person said, hey, cut it out, we usually did. And then muttered under our breath, shut up, old man, or whatever. But we were decent enough to be a citizen. I just think we have a greater issue in society. So thank you. If you were Blair and Sinatra, I'd come and hang out with you, for crying out loud. I've got the world on a string. Sitting on a rainbow.
Okay, so listen, so Tony's going to be joining us momentarily. I've teased this long enough, so I'm going to tell you the record that I think is up there with the 56-game hit streak, Coz.
I'm ready for it.
LeBron went over 40,000 points this weekend. I don't think that's going to be broken anytime soon, but maybe could be broken. But how about LeBron has now gone 1,205 and counting consecutive games in double-digit scoring. And I don't think that ever is going to get touched. Not that there's nobody capable, but to be able to have the longevity to not twist your ankle in the first 5 minutes of a game and then have to shut it down for the game after you've scored 4 points. That is absolutely, I think that is an untouchable record. 1,205 straight games with at least 10 points.
You're right. That's an amazing record. And the guy has missed games, right? So it doesn't count the games that he has missed. The games that he has played in, he has scored double digits this many consecutive times because he has had injuries in which he has had to take games off. Just recently, just the other day, he missed a game. But that is remarkable. No matter how you slice it, that is remarkable to have that many games with double-digit scoring. I mean, it's not like he's 7'6", when George Mikan was, 7 foot and the next tallest guy was 6'4". I mean, this is a league with a lot of large men who are very athletic, and you'd think that there'd be a circumstance where you come down on a guy's ankle and you kind of say, crap, I'm going to call it a night. LeBron has a lot right with him. There's no question about that, bro. No question.
And, I called a number of games with LeBron during my 10 years with the Timberwolves, and I think there was one game where he had like 8 points going to the fourth quarter. And you're like, oh, is this the night? And he ends up finishing with, 26. So it's unbelievable. And I don't know how much longer that record is going to go. But, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if when he retires, that record is still active.
You could be right. I mean, it is remarkable what he's doing. Fun fact, I was there for his very first NBA game, regular season NBA game. I was actually doing the pre and the post game show for that and the sideline reporting for that. And fun fact, I'm on the cutting room floor of his very first Nike commercial.
Really?
Yes. I was brought in to be a broadcaster for the Nike commercial, and then they cut that scene out of the 30-second spot.
Did you still get paid?
Yes, I did get paid.
Well, that, at the end of the day, is what matters the most.
True that.
That's the only thing that matters. Hey, Coz and Dave, if we can backtrack for just a second, going back to the story about the 80-year-old, I have a story that is similar to that. Not that I was involved in it, but that I heard from the horse's mouth, and it's a pretty cool story. And I just accessed it in the recesses of my memory. It was a long time ago. I was 16 years old. I was in Philadelphia, and I went to Joe Frazier's gym, and I met him. And the great Joe Frazier, he was wearing all white, and he was decked out. He was wearing all white, and he had a gold chain on him. And we're sitting there, and his son Marvis, who fought Evander Holyfield, was there with us, and Joe was telling stories, and they said that, the last week, they went into a grocery store, and Joe noticed this young man who wasn't, in Joe's opinion, dressed very nicely, and so Joe had said something to him, and the guy didn't know who Joe was and reached back and punched him.
What?
And I said, well, is that kid alive now? and Joe said the Lord was with him that day because I didn't have all my guards with me. But, that just shows you kind of, and this was years ago, but still, we're in still the same generation. That just shows you somebody, one of the greatest boxers of all time, probably the second greatest of all time. Some kid clocks him in the supermarket because he perceived there was some disrespect there.
Wow. Interesting.
Well, that's probably not very bright, and that wasn't a good day. You don't punch Joe Frazier. You also don't pull on the cape of Tony Bruno, who is ready to rumble right now. Tony's ready to bring it. I'm sure he's got a lot of takes ready after a very busy weekend across the sports landscape. And Tony, my first question for you as you join us for the crossover is, were you looking on and just envy at these offensive linemen at the combine who had to start their drill laying flat on their backs and then get up and thinking, that's a drill that I could handle starting off just laying on the ground?
I do that drill every morning. It gets me up every day. But again, I'm not trying to be drafted by the Buffalo Bills. But no, the big stories, obviously, are, a lot of stuff happening today. You're talking about Smoking Joe Frazier, a good friend and a guy who I got to know, and his son Marvis, as Mr. Fowler there was talking about, the great Joe Frazier. I was instrumental in helping get a statue built of Joe Frazier in Philly because, there's a lot of sports hero statues, Willie Mays in San Francisco, you go around. But Joe Frazier, one of the legendary boxers in Philly history, which is a town that's had a lot of great boxers, Joe Frazier did not have a statue. So when I was doing local radio on WIP, I'm the guy who says, how do we not have a statue of Joe Frazier? We have a statue of Rocky, a fictional character in a movie, as great as the movie was. We don't have a statue of a great Philadelphia hero in Joe Frazier. So a local artist was listening. He commissioned it, and then we got the Joe Frazier statue built in Philly. So that's how you.
That's
You know,
beautiful.
when you do local sports radio, when you're goofing around most of the time. You know, I don't know if you saw the 30 for 30 for Reggie White. I led a rally to have people condemn Norman Brayman, the owner of the Eagles, for not even making an offer to Reggie White, one of the greatest, if not the greatest defensive end in NFL history. So you can do stuff on sports radio that could, you know, drive some impact. Again, not curing cancer, you know, not solving, not making decisions on Supreme Court rulings, but just talking about local stuff in those particular cities, or even national stuff now with people with big national voices, which I am no longer a part of that. But we do have national voices coming up on the show today, guys.
But wait a minute, I got to ask you, Tony. You got that
Yes.
Smoking Joe Frazier done. Did you get the over on 3rd and South? Did you get a Larry Fine statue, or at least a plaque somewhere for the great stooge of the Three Stooges, the great Larry Fine, who was born on 3rd Street in Philadelphia?
Yeah, there's a bar there, and there is a plaque that says this is the birthplace of Larry Fine. Because
There
Larry
you go.
And Mo were actual brothers. You know, Dr. Fine, Dr. Howard. No, it was Shemp Howard, right?
Yes.
And Larry Fine was not one of the brothers. Shemp had
Right.
other brothers. Mo was his brother. And it's good stooge knowledge right there.
That is. Thank you. And then Curly.
That is
and
great
then
stooges knowledge.
Shemp left the group because he went on to have his own career. He did about 90 to 100 films. They needed the third. That's where they got Curly, who became the most famous of the Stooges.
I have no idea.
Quiet,
what
numbskulls.
you guys are
I'm
talking
broadcasting.
Matt, yes, we're broadcasting. Matt has no clue what we're talking about right
I
now.
know the Three Stooges. I know the Three Stooges, but that's about the extent of, you know, I don't go deep dives on the Three Stooges because I'm, you know, 32
Oh, you
years
should.
old. So
Well, you know,
You
it's
should.
Man, they're legendary. I mean, even Robin
Yes.
doesn't like the Three Stooges.
But I know more than that. Jeez.
Come on, man.
Hey,
The Stooges were the great. I mean, people, you know, I remember when I was a kid, the parents would say, "Don't watch that. People are going to get pans and hit each other and poke each other in the eyes." I said, "No, they're not. That stuff hurts. Who's going to do that? Look." And then poke your eye out, and they would slap each other on the head. We need to bring the Stooges back in America
agree.
and start slapping people in the head and poking them in the eyes when they outrage us over stupid shit.
Curly would have won the slap league. You know how you had the woman, the slap
exactly,
champion? Curly would have won the slap league because he could take so many shots from Mo every episode, for crying out loud.
Well, now you remember, you know, Dave Benz was out there in Las Vegas. You saw the woman, the Hungarian Hurricane, who slapped
I looked
me.
her
She
up.
was the female champion.
Yes.
Hey,
I let
I
her
paid
slap
for
me
that.
around a little bit. Just
Exactly. I paid for that service, Tony.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Just like Coach was. Coach was looking to get involved in the MMA on Friday. Hey, Tony, going back to the statue conversation real quick with Philly. They announced last week Allen Iverson is going to be getting a statue
Yes.
in Philadelphia.
He should. The good thing is it's not going to require a lot of clay to form it, you know, because he was a little guy. But Allen Iverson should have, even though he didn't win an NBA championship. You know, Charles Barkley didn't win an NBA championship, and he's idolized. And that brings me to the point, because Jason Kelsey, I watched an hour-long news conference today.
Oh, wow.
And he was emotional. It was a great – he spoke for 1 hour today in front of the media. His brother Travis was there in Philly, all of his teammates, his wife. Brilliant guy. I mean, he lost it a lot. He was super emotional. So we'll play some of the Jason Kelsey retirement. You know, people were talking right after the Super Bowl when he was out there watching his brother Travis win, you know, with the Kansas City, with the Chiefs out in Las Vegas, where we were for the 9 days. But, you know, a great guy. And, you know, we talk about Mount Rushmore, as people always want to do that. You know, in sports town, nobody ever thinks of a center as a guy who was like one of the greatest athletes in any city's history. I know the Niners had great centers, but Jason Kelsey broke down why he is beloved in Philly, because he's one of the guys. And I think that's why his retirement, you know, people were watching it and crying. That's how important this guy was, and how important that he realized what it is to play in Philly. And he if you haven't had a chance to hear it, I'm sure you'll see a lot of the cuts all over the media today, because it's a big story.
I believe on Friday I called the fact that he was.
Yes, you
going to
did,
retire.
Robin. Robin knows, because he was talking with his family and his wife. He's got 3 daughters. And people are already texting me saying, well, he got out of there because he saw how messed up the Eagles are. No, he got out of there because he and his wife and his 3 daughters decided it was time to move on. So we'll have, and also today, guys, we will have the last interview that I was lucky enough to do with Chris Mortensen, who we
that's
lost
awesome.
over the weekend. Yeah, so Chris Mortensen, and then Phil Simms will join us right afterwards because we were joking around about Phil Simms. So Phil's going to join us live. We'll talk about Chris Mortensen and all the other important things going on in sports. Forget about the weekend. We got stuff going on right now, man.
Well, that is a heck of a tease and a heck of a show. And, Tony, hopefully when you're done, you can get on a plane and fly to Cleveland because tonight the Cavaliers are having – this makes a ton of sense to me. I didn't realize this. The Kelsey brothers are from Cleveland. The Cavs are honoring Travis and Jason Kelsey tonight with a bobblehead giveaway. It is Kelsey brothers bobblehead night at the Cavs game tonight in Cleveland. So you're going to want to be.
One thing Jason Kelsey did was he talked about his love growing up in Cleveland and his brother and playing in Cincinnati. So these guys have deserved the praise. I mean, you talk about a story that transcends football. I mean, the Travis story and all the other stuff, and Kelsey had his own documentary. So these guys are, they're pretty powerful in America
How long
right
before there's a movie about the brothers?
now. Exactly.
Not
It's
long.
going to happen. You know it is.
That will happen. All right, guys, good stuff. We'll look forward to your show coming up at the top of the hour. And that just about does it for us today on the Monday edition. Our thanks to Katie Wu, who stopped by for our spring swing. Matt Mayoko checked in to talk about the Combine, as well as Chris Mortensen. And tomorrow, we're going to get into bracketology, as well as continue our
There's
spring
only
swing.
one real place for total sports. That's the Tony Bruno Sports Network. Bud Light presents Real Men
All right, guys.
of Genius. Real.
Good stuff. Do we just want to stay on here to chat?
No. Let's just
Okay.